This little camera went absolutely viral last year, but how good is it? Welcome to the bright side. This is the CampSnap, a little digital camera that looks and feels exactly like the old school disposable cameras that we all used to use in the 90s and 2000s. All last year I kept seeing this camera everywhere, all on my Facebook and Instagram feeds, and at first I thought this would just be a little scam camera that was really a toy but was marketed as a real camera. But then more and more photographers actually started paying attention to it and started using it for actual photos. So eventually I ended up buying this one about summer of last year, and I've actually taken a lot of photos with it, but I haven't actually looked at any yet. So let's do that today and see how actually good or bad this camera really is. But first, I feel like it's really important to understand where exactly this camera came from. CampSnap was founded by a couple named Brian and Melanie from Ontario, Canada. And the reason they created this camera was to give their children something to take photos with at summer camp. Apparently, summer camps don't really allow screen devices to be used. So originally, they were sending their kids to summer camps with actual film disposable cameras. Two issues there that they found. One, you're limited to a single roll of film in the camera itself. And two, film is really limited on availability of development and time. So really, this camera is geared more toward the younger photographers out there and parents not really wanting to buy a camera with just another screen for them. Why I decided to buy the camera was because, well, first of all, size. This thing is absolutely tiny. That makes it super easy to take it anywhere, anytime. But second, something about this just gives me extreme nostalgia for when I was a kid. Like I said in my first video, I grew up using disposable film cameras all the time. Whether I was good at taking photos with them or not, that's a different story, but this, having it in my hands, it just feels like my childhood. I've been using this camera for the last 6 months for mainly parties and just hanging around with friends, but I've also taken it to a couple of vacations, and I'm really interested to see how it does in different environments. So looking at the photos themselves straight out of camera, these are unedited. Immediately to me, the blues and the green tones are surprisingly really good. And I really love that they added a little bit of a filter in camera to give you more vintage style photos without having to edit in order to get that style. It matches perfectly with the design and feel of this camera. Surprisingly to me though, where I see this camera thriving the most is actually outdoor photography, especially with my vacation photos. The blues in the skies really pop, and even in harsh daylight, you still get surprisingly good exposure levels. Yes, the super bright white tones are way too blown out, but that ultimately is due to this camera only shooting in JPEG and not RAW, and of course not having any controls over your actual exposures. And if you do decide to edit any of these photos, it just takes a little bit of adjustment to make the photos really, really cool. Now, there are some bad things about this camera. Right off the bat, the first bad thing I have to say about this camera is the actual shutter button and response time of the camera. The time between you hitting the actual shutter button and the camera actually taking a photo is anywhere between 2 to 3 seconds. It's a significant delay, and especially when kids are supposed to be using this camera, kids want to just push a button and move on. Even adults nowadays, if you hit a button, taking a photo should be instant. You should be able to move on. But instead, you're forced to take a little bit of time between hitting the shutter button, waiting, and then the photo takes. But honestly, I can't really ding this camera for that, because CampSnap actually addressed this last year with their new models of cameras. There's 3 different models currently. There's 101, which is this one, the OG. There's a 102 model, and now currently there is a 103 model. The 102 model specifically, they laid out, fixes the delay within the shutter button. I haven't tried any of the newer models, this is just the one I have, but them actually addressing and fixing the shutter issue is CampSnap actually paying attention to their client base. It's pretty cool. Another limitation to this camera specifically is with high contrast photography. You'll see in a couple of photos that we were at a fort and we were taking a few photos of the brick windows in this fort. But as you can see, the harsh daylight created a huge white blotch, basically blown out white bright light, where you have no detail as to what's outside that window. You do see the detail of the bricks, which is really good, but anything beyond that, nothing. This camera does have a flash option, either on, off, or auto. I don't think I ever used it in the auto feature. I either determined myself whether or not I wanted a flash. And honestly, I wouldn't really option using the flash very often. As you can see in these photos, we were having a Halloween party with our friends, and we were just passing around the camera, everyone taking turns, having fun with it. And that really speaks to how versatile and easy to use this camera is. Literally all of my friends handled this camera throughout the night, having fun taking photos. But with the flash specifically, I learned that you cannot be too close to the camera lens while using the flash. Otherwise, your face is just going to be completely blown out. I found the best distance is probably an arm's length away, and anything between myself and the camera, if you're using a flash, is just going to be extremely blown out. You can see here with taking a selfie with one of my friends, I had the camera about an arm's length away. Using the flash, I am pretty well lit, but my friend was in between the distance of myself and my camera, and her face is totally blown out. I also learned that this camera is surprisingly inconsistent with the quality of photos and the level of exposure between each photo. Even if you take two photos of the exact same subject in the exact same environment at the exact same time, just seconds apart from each other, you'll notice inconsistencies in the lighting within the camera, the exposure, and overall quality, which is a little weird. But at the same time, this camera is only $60. So for that money, you can't really expect it to put out high grade, super good quality photos every single time. One super weird thing though that I found, I think it's specifically with my camera because I haven't seen anyone else talk about it, is in a couple of shots you'll see a series of X's in the corners of my photos. For some reason I only noticed it when the sky is super blue in those areas. You can just see little X's all across the sky. Not really sure what that is. I'm going to chalk it up to being maybe my camera is defective, maybe there's something inside of it that during production it smudged and just needs cleaning on the inside. I don't really know what it is. I haven't seen anyone else talk about it, so I don't think I'll knock it for it, but it is kind of disappointing to see. But honestly, that's something that only we would notice. Especially you, since I pointed it out to you specifically. But when I was going through the photos with my wife, she didn't even notice it. I didn't even notice it until the very end when I was going back through them, and I pointed them out to her, and she even took a few seconds for her to realize that, oh yeah, there are some X's randomly popping up in the sky in the photos for some reason. Again, I think I was just a one-off with that issue, so I'm not going to knock it on that, but it is just a weird thing to note. Ultimately, I'm really happy with how all of the photos that I've taken have turned out. It's just not all of them, of course, aren't going to be the best, and especially with the flash, I would not recommend ever using it. So where does this camera really highlight? From the photos I've taken, I honestly think that this camera is definitely the best outside doing small landscape photography. With the high contrast between the blues and the super vibrant greens that this camera gives off, it's a style that's very reminiscent of the 90s and 2000s and really makes you miss the old school super stylized days of photography. So who's this camera for? I actually think CampSnap nailed their demographic with this camera, creating it specifically for kids and young photographers whose parents don't really want to give them another camera with another screen on it, something that keeps them in the moment but is still super easy to carry around everywhere you go. Where we go wrong is buy this camera for $60 and expect it to perform the same as a Sony or a Fujifilm. This camera is all about the fun factor, not so much about the quality of the photos themselves. Like I said, I've taken this camera to a couple of parties, sat it on a table, and my friends instinctively have just picked it up, turned it on, and immediately start shooting photos. The overall simplicity of the design makes it to where anyone can pick this camera up and just have fun with it. I think it speaks volumes that I've owned this camera for over 6 months now, and I just now decided to plug it into my computer, download the images, and actually look at them for the first time. The act of just having this camera with you, whether you're going to an event or party or just hanging out with friends and passing it around to everyone, letting people take turns with it, having fun taking photos again, that in itself is what this camera was made for. And honestly, CampSnap nailed it. That's it from me, guys. Thank you all very much for watching today. And let me know in the comments below what you want to see from me next. I have a few things lined up for the graphic design side, but if you have anything specific that you want me to cover, leave it down below in a comment and I'll try to incorporate it soon. Also, please like and subscribe. That really helps, especially since I have 8 subscribers right now. What's up, all 8 of you? That's it from me, guys. Thank you again very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.